All right.
Say sarcastically.
Stephanie, all right. So, good evening, everyone. It's 5:30, so we will get started. Brent Gary is out in the area, so I'll chair this meeting. Just a couple things that I will point out before we get started and Stephanie calls roll. We do have a hard stop tonight at 7:20 PM. So we can take a short break and then get set up for the council meeting that's taking place at 7:30. So just keep that in mind with regard to your comments and any feedback you're providing. So with that, Stephanie, would you please call roll?
Sure, thank you. Richard Bloom,
Here.
Fred Green,
Here.
David Feta,
Here.
May Hayes,
Here.
Dave Rand,
Present.
John Smart,
Here.
Ken Stoker,
Here.
and Planning Commission, Dan O'Neill,
Here.
Nancy Aldridge,
Here.
Colton Brady, Michael Peterson, Jared Rutter, Braden Slaughter.
He just got a text from he's on his way.
Okay, I will notate his arrival time, and then Chad Duchek.
All right, thank you. With that, I'm gonna turn things over to you, Eric.
All right.
With the presentation.
Wonderful, thank you.
Discussion.
So, this evening, we are going to be talking about the comprehensive plan climate element. This is a requirement from the state in House Bill 1181 for us to adopt a climate element into our comprehensive plan. We have hired Cascadia and Burke Consulting to help us with this effort. This was done as a joint effort between the cities of Richland, Kennewick, Pasco, West Richland, and Benton County. So it's been a joint effort. We've all been doing this together so that we have mostly similar elements within our comprehensive plans. We wanted that consistency between the agencies here in the Tri-Cities. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Gretchen. One more comment I wanted to make too is that Gretchen's going to do a presentation, or Catherine. I'm not sure which one's going to be taking the ball, but they'll be doing a presentation this evening on this climate element overview, give us some background and go through all of it. Again, this is a state requirement, so we're not really here to debate whether or not climate change exists. It's more just what can we do to address the requirements that the state has for us as a city and as a jurisdiction for our comprehensive plan. So with that, Gretchen, I'll pass it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. And thank you all of you for having us this evening. My name is Gretchen Muller, and I'm a director at Cascadia Consulting Group and have served and continue to serve as the project manager for the Tri-Cities Regional Climate Element. And I'm joined by Catherine, Allison, and Alicia Fennell as well from Cascadia. And we can go ahead to the next slide, please. So as Eric mentioned, here is our proposed pathway for our time with you all today in terms of the agenda. So we have a couple of slides that really introduce the regional effort, a few of the talking points that Eric just spoke to. So I'll be turning it back over to him in just a minute or two here. We'll do a walkthrough of the state requirements for climate planning and how this draft climate element, which is up for public comment right now, is addressing those requirements. Then we'll get into the key components, what makes up a climate element and what do you all have as part of that draft climate element. Turn it over to Catherine at this point to walk through some of the high-level key findings from some of the analysis work that we did as part of this effort. And then she will also walk through some of the draft goals and associated policies. Then we'll wrap with next steps. Any questions on our proposed pathway forward during our time with you all tonight?
I don't see any, so go right ahead, Gretchen.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate that. And with that, I'm going to turn it right back over to Eric here for a couple of slides, reintroducing that regional effort.
Yeah, so as I stated, this has been a regional effort between the local jurisdictions here in the Tri-Cities and Benton County. The purpose of that, again, was we all share the same air, we all share the same struggles as far as smoke, air quality, heat, and fire, floods. A lot of those are shared between all of the jurisdictions. So it made sense for us to come together and use the grant monies that were provided to do that. It also provided us with a a larger reserve in the grant money to actually do some implementation efforts later on. So we'll be going back to those dollars to actually put into play some of the policies that we'll be looking to adopt. There is a climate advisory team. There was a citizens advisory group that came together and provided some feedback throughout the process. So there will be some policies that they recommended in there that we'll be reviewing. So as far as region-wide policies, so there are some that we're going to be required to adopt with our state requirements. There are some in there that I believe are that were recommended by the Citizen Advisory Committee that we might be making some changes to or not recommending council adopt at all because of just the policy itself. It doesn't fit our need as a community. But we'll be providing that information to you and going through this as we go through. So looking at all of this, we did take a look at the impacts to our community by all of these different elements within our area and how they interplay with the other elements of our comprehensive plan. Because there is connection to each of the comprehensive plan elements, transportation element, for instance, the housing element, utility element, the land use, how we put land use together and how they function to impact vehicle mileage travel, for instance. So all of those assessments were done. We provided a lot of information. There's a gap analysis that they provided to make sure that our comprehensive, that we're not putting any redundancies in our comprehensive plan, that we already have policies in place. We're not going to repeat those policies.
Here's a question. Aren't some of these already found in, maybe Roscoe, no, and the natural hazard mitigation plan is required by FEMA?
Yes, so, which was ironic that they were both being updated at the same time, so there's a lot of playing back and forth between the hazard mitigation plan and the climate element.
Okay.
So there was definitely feedback being provided through those processes because with how our shop operates with one person wearing multiple hats.
Mhm.
You know, Ross and I were looking at this, we're also looking at hazard mitigation.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. One, I was wondering about the climate policy advisory team that was just throughout all of our region, right?
Yes.
And then that was created and who was in charge of putting those folks together?
So all of the community development directors were part of the team of the different jurisdictions. And so each of us provided names and recommendations of who should be on those on that committee. So we provided that information, and they were contacted and invited to participate.
Are they inside of this, or is there a way to know at least what the professions are?
Gretchen, is there any detail on who wasn't part of the CAC?
We can circulate a list of the names of the CPAT. We call it the CPAT, and also their affiliations for you, Eric, to then circulate to your full group here, if that would be helpful.
It's mainly the affiliations I'm worried about, but just curious about.
Mostly retired individuals.
We got a lot.
Clarification, last bullet, what's GHG?
Greenhouse gas.
Okay.
Does that include all the greenhouse gases?
Don't go there, John.
I know, because we're not responsible for it. Inventorying our greenhouse gas.
All right.
Gretchen, do you want to answer that? As far as what the greenhouse gas is?
About what we can have Alicia answer that, who's part of our greenhouse gas inventory team, if we want to. I mean, we do have some more slides in the upcoming
We'd like to try to get
here
through the
that
slides.
that dives into
At the end, that was the format for tonight. So if you have questions, please write them down and we can address those. We'll have plenty of time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, here to answer any and all questions that y'all have. Do you want to keep going here or? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. All right, so we'll keep going here. So we're going to dive into the state requirements with this next slide. And so I'm sure you all were driving here to your meeting tonight wondering what is a climate element and what are the pieces that are part of it. So in 2023, the legislature amended Washington's Growth Management Act, or GMA, through House Bill 1181. And the resulting GMA requirements newly tasked cities at that time, cities and counties, to integrate both climate resilience as well as greenhouse gas emission reduction policies into comprehensive plan updates. So as your jurisdiction is undergoing a comprehensive plan update, this requirement, as that pie graph or that kind of circle, all the various different circles a couple of slides ago showcased all the other elements that are part of your comprehensive plan. And this House Bill 1181 also included this new climate element as part of that update. And the greenhouse gas sub-element it was required for cities over 6,000 residents in 11 of the largest and fastest growing cities. So Benton County is one of those counties. So West Richland needed also to include a greenhouse gas emissions reduction sub-element. So the draft climate element that is up for public comment right now on the BFCOG website includes both the resilience sub-element as well as the greenhouse gas sub-element. So those two pieces. And our North Stars are captured on this slide here as part of this planning effort. So Tri-Cities Regional Climate Element, the North Star of being compliant with the GMA and House Bill 1181 requirements. And it's informed by data, community engagement as well, integrated with other plans and planning efforts, as you all mentioned, the hazard mitigation plan, other comprehensive plan updates as well, or elements as well, so that this climate element is speaking to those other elements in your comprehensive plan, supported by community, city staff, decision makers, and that it reads as clear, feasible, and provides a path towards implementation as well. Go ahead, we can keep going here. I'm going to do a bit of a deeper dive into these two key components that I just talked about, the two sub-elements. The emissions reduction sub-element, as I mentioned, is required by 11 of the state's largest and fastest growing counties and their cities, and includes emissions reduction measures to reduce both greenhouse gas emissions as well as vehicle miles traveled. And in alignment with the GMA, or Growth Management Act, the climate element also seeks to support overburdened communities that may be experiencing the first and in some cases the worst consequences of climate change. And then on the right side or left side of your screen, depending on how you're looking at it, the resilience sub-element includes adaptation measures to improve both resilience to climate impacts and climate impacts such as flooding, heat, smoke, and wildfires. So this slide captures what's captured in both of the sub-elements, the emissions reduction sub-element, as well as the resilience sub-element. Go to the next slide, please. So here are the three main requirements as part of the resilience sub-element. These are the minimum requirements. So requirement 1, addressing natural hazards created or aggregated by climate change. Requirement 2 is identifying, protecting, and enhancing natural areas to foster climate resilience. And the third requirement, identifying, protecting, and enhancing community resilience to climate impacts. So those are the three minimum requirements as part of the resilience sub-element. Go to the next slide, please. And this slide captures the minimum requirements for the greenhouse gas emissions reduction sub-element. So we've got the first one of reducing overall greenhouse gas emissions within jurisdictions without increasing emissions elsewhere in Washington. So that's requirement 1. Requirement 2 is reducing per capita VMT or vehicle miles traveled without increasing emissions elsewhere in Washington. And then this third minimum requirement of prioritizing reductions that benefit overburdened communities and also maximize co-benefits. And the goals and policies that fall and that Catherine will be walking through in just a few slides here need to work towards an overall greenhouse gas emission reduction target of net zero emissions by 2050. And with that, we can keep going here. So this captures the various different ingredients and pieces of and steps in developing your draft climate element. And this slide captures the cadence and the timeline associated with each of these key deliverables. And these deliverables and steps align with Commerce's guidance for completing the climate element. So each one of these are a requirement to developing the draft climate element. And they will be in the appendices of the draft climate element as well. So we've got the tree canopy assessment, the climate impact summary, a climate vulnerability assessment. Those are the three main deliverables for the development of the climate resilience subelement. And on the yellow timeline here, we've got the greenhouse gas inventory and projections, as well as vehicle miles traveled analysis. And those various different deliverables then resulted in the development of draft goals and policies, and ultimately this draft climate element. You can go to the next slide, please. And also showcasing here, same slide on the top there of the various different deliverables associated with these two sub-elements. And the bottom is the various different steps that were taken around engagement, both on the community engagement side of things, and then also the CPAT, as we're calling it, the advisory team as well that was engaged through various different points, and the CPAT reviewed each of the draft deliverables as they were developed along that continuum as well. And we just wrapped up our last CPAT meeting last week, and wrapped up our final public meeting last night. Great. So any clarifying questions on either the minimum requirements and or the climate element timeline and associated deliverables?
Could you go back one slide, please?
Of course.
Okay, so the public review window is September through October, and that is through these meetings, or is it presented separately in a separate forum?
So there were two public meetings, one virtual and one in person, and then the draft climate element has been up on the BFCOG website, and there's an associated comment process that people can, there's a link to both the document and also if you'd like to submit a comment or set of comments as well, all on the BFCOG website through October 8th.
Right, so the public review window is on BFCOG right now.
It is, yes. It has been, yeah, for a couple of weeks now.
Right, on the website.
So on our website.
Oh, on our website also?
Where they can go.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent.
And each of the jurisdictions are linking to the BFCOG website. Yeah, thanks for adding that, Eric.
Yes.
This area is having a problem with ozone. Is that included in this policy, the study?
The question, Gretchen, was about ozone and if it was included in this policy or not.
The ozone in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and its impact
Yes.
on the ozone.
Yeah.
Alicia,
Yeah.
do you want to address that?
Sorry, finding my mute button. I feel like that's something that we might want to circle back on and look into. I don't know offhand. So the greenhouse gas analysis, which we'll walk through an overview in just a couple slides, is in terms of CO2e, so the kind of carbon dioxide equivalent. So looking at all different greenhouse gas emissions, including methane and nitrous oxide and carbon dioxide. So it's in terms of the emissions analysis, we do take into account multiple different specific greenhouse gases. And in terms of addressing impact on ozone, I haven't been a part of those conversations explicitly, but I'd be happy to look into that and circle back on that.
Ozone is quickly approaching EPA oversight in this area. The prevalence of ozone, specifically in the no, I think it's the summer, fall months, the winter months. I can't remember which months. But I'm on the Benton Clean Air Board, and ozone is becoming a big issue for us in the Tri-Cities area.
But is it greenhouse gas? It's
The
considered,
definition of
Is it?
greenhouse gas, I looked at the definition, ozone's not
no, ozone's not included,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
but it is becoming very prevalent in this area, specifically in the Kennewick area.
The water vapor would be our next biggest concern. And I don't believe either of those were part of the analysis.
Okay.
With the last part, it says adoption December 2026. Should that be 2025, or are we gonna go a whole year and some odd months more before we actually would decide on adopting this?
So our periodic update isn't due until the end of next year. So it will be adopted, included into that overall package.
Okay.
Any other questions on either the minimum requirements and or the timeline and associated deliverables?
Yeah, the volume is really great.
Gonna say
Up on here, maybe?
which button?
It's on, I can look.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
There's no additional buttons.
Thanks, man.
I tried. IT guy in my past life. No, I was.
Thank
I'm
you.
kidding. Not even close, far from it.
Public plans. All right, let's
We
keep
keep
going.
going? Okay,
Yeah.
great. I'm gonna pass it over to Catherine now to walk through some of our high-level key findings and then also the draft goals and associated policies.
Great, thank you, everyone. Happy to share just a few high-level overviews from some of those technical reports that Gretchen just highlighted as the foundation for our draft policies and goals. So we can go to the next slide. I wanted to start with the regional findings from the community survey that we had in March. And just wanted to note that these responses and these themes are representative of the whole region. Residents were reflecting on the different impacts that they've experienced from extreme weather events, such as financial impacts and physical health impacts. They also shared that their top concerns are around wildfire smoke, increased temperatures, drought, and wind. And they also shared that they have support for various resilient strategies, including additional shade and tree canopy, natural flood control measures, and the need for more affordable heating and cooling systems. As we mentioned, as one of the requirements of the resilient sub-element of the climate element, we look at key hazards for the region, and this was informed by some technical analysis and was bolstered by the community survey I just mentioned, our project team, including Eric and the other jurisdictions, as well as our technical advisory team to determine which four key hazards we were going to focus on. And we know that there are others in the region, but these are the four that all the policies and goals in order to meet requirements are seeking to address. Next, I want to share just a few of the key vulnerabilities that we identified in our climate vulnerability assessment. That's a report that builds off of the key hazards identified and to understand how they intersect with the people, the buildings, the natural environment in the city. So for wildfire, we know that there's been several large wildland fires in the area and growing development in the wildland urban interface, also called the WUI, can increase fire suppression challenges. And along with that, we know some extreme weather impacts can have impacted power lines, especially near large trees. And when a big storm comes down or a wind comes through the area, those can knock out the power and really impact West Richland residents. So moving on to some of the findings that informed our greenhouse gas sub-element. This is an overview of the primary greenhouse gas emissions for the city. You'll see that it's divided into three main segments. In green is the transportation emissions, in blue are buildings emissions, and that orange-yellow color are solid waste emissions. And the two largest sources for West Richland are on-road passenger vehicles and off-road equipment. And next, the vehicle miles traveled, or VMT study, also informs our greenhouse gas mitigation policies. For West Richland, VMT is expected to increase about 15% by 2045, mostly due to job and housing growth that will increase the number of car trips for residents getting around the area. And currently, about 64% of resident commute trips are less than 25 minutes. For the region, the average is 69% of residents have a commute of 25 minutes or less. So West Richland is a little bit under that, but still on par. And finally, I just want to highlight ways that the West Richland Comprehensive Plan and Shoreline Master Program are already addressing climate resilience in an alignment with commerce requirements. Some existing policies prioritize recreational spaces and natural area protection, water resource, and stormwater conservation. Some of the gaps that we identified that our new policies and goals are seeking to address include ecosystem protection, carbon sequestration, and waste reduction.
Excuse me. I have another question.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. On the policy trends, you have water and natural resource protection, farming and water usage, including water conservation and stormwater management. Isn't the city already required to develop policies concerning those two, stormwater and water?
Yeah, those are existing policies.
And we're gonna use
So that's,
those?
so it says existing policies in West Richland, the policy trends are
Oh,
going.
I'm sorry,
Have
I was looking
already.
at policies.
Those that we have, the policy gaps are the policies that we don't have. That we need to.
Oh, for the other trends.
So we need to come up with
Okay,
policies to.
all right, thank you.
Yeah, great
And one
question.
thing I didn't mention in terms of the deliverables and that timeline slide was we conducted an extensive policy audit as a very first step in this process. So identifying and pulling from what are all the existing plans that may have some overlap with this effort, and pulling out those existing policies that y'all already do have, and then the draft climate element, and Catherine can speak to this, and we'll be speaking to this in just a moment here. But we reference, that one of those kind of North Stars that I mentioned, that this element speaks to your other planning efforts. So the climate element indicates where it's an existing policy and you're already covering it elsewhere, or as Eric just mentioned, whether it's a gap and we didn't see it in any of your existing policies.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Any other questions before we move on to getting into the goals and policies?
Yeah, I have a question back on slide 21. Just wondering if not right now, but in the future, I'd be curious to know where the data sets are. Let's see, maybe back another one. Sorry. Back one more slide.
The pie chart.
Related to the greenhouse gas emissions. Yeah.
Yeah, and the one before that where you list maybe it was, I didn't write down, there's climate hazards.
Climate hazard.
Was back one more, maybe I was on. Yeah, there we go.
18.
And then the one before that where you talk about, sorry, I was way off. Okay. So this community engagement, these are just people citing their subjective opinions on the extreme weather events, impacts, and resilience strategies, or is there data that goes behind this?
Yeah, we can both, probably all three of us can speak to it, because each of the slides that we walk through have a different methodology associated with them, and different information that was pulled differently. So we did, one of the initial touch points with the community was a community survey, where you're exactly right. It's subjective. It's people speaking to their lived experience. And so that information is part of and captured in our community engagement section.
Yeah.
And of the climate element.
Well, I just make note of this, that I've been in this community for over 50 years. And I'm a little bit of a weather aficionado. I like to keep track of things. And honestly, in my humble opinion, like none of this has changed. Just saying. So I'm just curious if there's actually data, but it sounds like there isn't. It's just a list of subjective opinions that you took in a survey. I just wanted to make that clear. So I'm okay with that. I just wanted to know if there was some great data set we were using that I would love to get my hands on that proved that some of these things were actually increasing or a higher risk now than they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah,
So
so
that's
you
all.
did reference the community engagement slide, and so that was a survey, but we
Just
can
so,
speak to the key hazards facing the region. Catherine can speak to that methodology if that would be helpful, because there was a methodology that is associated with the vulnerability assessment that we completed, which is
yeah,
separate from the community engagement.
yeah, any data sets like that, I'd love to see. So, like I said, not right now, but
Yeah.
maybe in the future.
Okay. And in the climate element, we speak to, for both of the sub-elements, both the resilient sub-element as well as the greenhouse gas sub-element, we speak to the methodologies for both of those. So it's in that draft climate element as well, if you wanted to take a deep dive.
Yeah,
I'll just
well,
add.
maybe just one quick question though. Did any of those methodologies include actual data measurements, like weather data sets, or were they just all surveys? They were data sets. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you want to take a deeper dive, the appendices that are associated with the draft climate element, both the climate impact summary that dives into what we're looking at this slide, and then the climate vulnerability assessment, both would have all of the data sets that informed those reports.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Thank you.
You can go to our website, John, and link you to the COGS and download all those.
Okay, cool.
I don't see any other questions, Gretchen, Catherine, if you guys want to.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Well, I'm happy to walk us through a snapshot of our draft goals and policies. But first, I just wanted to share again the requirements that go into each of the sub-elements. So we can go to the next slide here. Yeah, perfect. So for the resilient sub-element, the minimum state requirements for these goals and policies are each of the climate exacerbated hazards, so the 4 that we were just looking at that last slide, we have a policy addressing each of those, and for each of the commerce identified priority sectors, which are these here listed in this table. And on the next slide, we have the minimum requirements for the greenhouse gas policies. So the mandate here is to reduce emissions, both total and per capita, and to utilize mitigation strategies, particularly around transportation, buildings and energy, and zoning and development, using the mitigation strategies listed in this table. And again, with that mandate that for the GHG policies, we're working towards that net zero emissions by 2050. And so with that, I'm going to start walking us through, there are many goals for this climate element. I'm not going to read all of them, but I do want to highlight kind of how they are informing and working together. So our first goal here is actually an overarching climate element goal. So all of the goals and all the policies throughout the 2 sub-elements are going to be integrating and bolstering and working towards this overall goal. And the policies associated with this goal are really looking to grow staff experience and skills to be able to implement the policies in the climate element, to invest in greenhouse gas and resilience implementation tracking, which is associated with a state requirement, and to implement policies that are aligned with defensible science. Our first sub-element goal for resilience is also an overarching goal. So each of these resilient sub-element goals are speaking into this one, but there are no associated policies for this first goal. And then we get into some of the sectors. So here is a transportations, buildings, energy, and land use. So those are the priority commerce sectors that the policies and goal in this section are speaking to. And these policies are looking to expand wildfire mitigation practices, particularly with utilities and fire departments, expand multimodal and active transportation, and increase energy efficiency in homes, especially with some of those low-cost cooling solutions. Our next set is for water resources, ecosystems, agriculture, and food systems. The policies for this section are looking to promote water storage and conservation practices with agriculture, new developments, and the general public, and to protect ecosystems from extreme heat, drought, and wildfire. Next is our economic development and cultural resources goal. Policies in this section are looking to make sure that climate hazards are integrated into hazard mitigation plans and to grow coordination with tribal governments to increase climate resilience and adaptation efforts. And our last resilience goal for this sub-element is in the health and well-being and emergency management sectors. And these policies are looking to collaborate on the floodplain map updates and the corresponding code updates, expand programs to provide both cooling and warming centers during emergencies, and to expand public outreach and education on emergency preparedness. Next, we move into the greenhouse gas sub-element. Again, we have an overarching goal for this sub-element that all of the subsequent goals will be supporting. And the first sector in this section is the buildings and energy, and policies for this goal are looking to reduce building energy consumption to improve energy efficiency. This will also help reduce people's energy cost burdens. And other policies are to align with state guidance for decarbonization and building codes for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Next, this one looks very long, but this goal is for transportation, zoning and development, and land use. And this topic in particular has a lot of differences between our city partners and Benton County partner. And so we want to make sure we are highlighting different pathways for this goal to be utilized for all of our jurisdictions. And the policies for this goal are looking to increase mixed-use land uses that integrate housing, transit, and amenities. This will help reduce commute times, have higher density infill developments, as well as increase bike and pedestrian transportation networks. And our last goal in the whole sub-element is our waste management goal. Policies for this one are to consider ways to reduce and expand recycling programs and other opportunities for regional collaboration on waste management. And I know we breezed through all those. I believe you all should have the full set of goals and policies already. And so would love to hear from you all if there are any major gaps in the goals or policies, anything that is you feel is important that we have not addressed already, as well as any groups of people that would benefit or be burdened by a particular policy. And if you have any other clarifying questions about anything we've talked about, we can also have time for that.
Good, so I think we've got about an hour and 10 minutes left, so if we stay focused on these questions and any questions from the presentation. Anyone?
Is it the end of the presentation part, so the rest can be
Yes.
filled if we choose to with questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is the time.
We have two additional slides that really talk to kind of a what's next once the climate element gets finalized by October 30th, and what's next for your comprehensive plan. But those are next. So a lot of time for questions and comments. Yeah, so we don't need to hit those right now.
I was just wondering what it meant by the floodplain map update. What would be,
So right now FEMA is going through Benton County floodplain map update, so all of the Yakima River, for us anyway. The Yakima River, the floodplain is the mapping there was done last in the seventies or eighties. So it's a bit old, you know, so almost as old as I am, it just kind of scary. So,
my mind just goes to the affordable housing, because if it gets updated to include certain more areas in flood zones that requires flood insurance, makes housing more expensive for people to obtain.
sure,
That was
absolutely.
the only thought I had.
But the fact is that the floodplain maps
Or super old.
are super old. They are using new data, their actual data that's way better now than what they had previously. And it's showing the risk, the level of risk. So, there's a public comment period for that too. If you want to go to their website and review those, you're more than welcome to provide them feedback on those.
But isn't most of that in the county? We do have a segment along
So,
the golf course, and that area is in the floodplain.
so the major part of the city that's in the floodplain is the golf course, which is also floodway.
Mhm.
There is a portion behind the levee, so there's the Benton County Levee District One or whatever. Or Dyking District that has from the south of the Van Giesen Bridge. There's a dike there.
Yeah,
They haven't certified their dike. So I'm not sure what that might do as far as the floodway or floodplain, I mean, behind it. I'm ensuring it's going to increase there within the city of West Richland. But we don't have any control over that dike or levee certification. That's all on the Dyking District. So if they are able to do that, then it will help us, you know, reduce or remove that floodplain behind that system. But that's out of our control. But majority of the floodplain is on the golf course and in that area within the city of West Richland.
but what about at the end of this new 750 acre parcel that's all
Around the
river? Right, that's
Yeah.
not,
It's a pretty steep slope and that whole
Okay.
slope there is not really slated for development. If it is, it's forever away, so.
Is consideration being made for what's happening upriver because Yakima has expanded their floodplain significantly? And all the way up through Ellensburg. So the floodplain for the Yakima Basin is improved significantly. I mean, the Yakima's moved their levees back 2 miles.
oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You're all welcome to call FEMA and have a conversation.
Well, I was.
Yeah, they're going through a whole process right now. They're using today's data that they have. So if the levee setback up in Yakima isn't happening for another couple of years, that won't be, but if it's happened, if it's already there, then that data should be part of their study. But feel free to reach out to FEMA, which is our emails there. If you'd like.
Well, some of the Ellensburg guys ended up being.
Yeah. Okay, you're anything?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I do. Okay, so. And a lot of this is gonna be colored by the fact that I just started and I'm almost done with a specific training associated with goals and end of year review type things. So I'm wondering, with these goals, I like that we're talking about it because it means that we're thinking about it whenever we're doing things, especially if it's included in there. But something that is discussed a lot in the non-related to West Richland training that I did was creating SMART goals, which I think most of you know what the SMART stands for: the specific, the measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. So the relevant is definitely there. The achievable, I believe, is there, depending on what we would say are the measurable amounts and the timeliness of it. And the specifics of it. So I'm wondering, are we going to create any specific measurable and timed goals related to these policies and goals?
Great
Is that a question for us or a question for Eric and
For
the
the
comprehensive
group,
plan?
something for us
So I
all
think
to
it's for
think
both of
about.
us, Gretchen, if
Yeah.
you wanna go ahead and take a stab at it first, and I'll follow.
Yeah, so great question. And related to the goals, the draft goals as they are right now. So these were intentionally somewhat higher level with more specifics around the policies. And then each of the policies honestly would be a spin-off into a potential program or project that would get delivered or that would get developed even further as part of the implementation phase. Because it's a regional plan, the group really wanted to keep them somewhat high level. And then the idea is that as part of each of the participating jurisdictions' own comprehensive plan update process, that further rumination and further customization either to the goals and associated policies and or both.
There are some specific goals. I mean, I think what's the net zero policy
Yeah.
that they want to have that by
Right.
2050? Is that right, Gretchen?
Right. Yep, exactly, and that's state.
So whether
That's
that's a smart goal or not is
Mhm.
up for
Yeah.
debate. And I'm not gonna go there tonight because that's at the legislature level. Okay.
The achievable part is questionable,
Right.
but yeah,
But, yeah.
specific,
Right.
measurable.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are
Mhm.
policies in here too that, quite frankly, wouldn't even do anything to get us there. There's a policy about putting misters in a transit stop. To help cool people as they wait for their bus to show up. So that's one that both Roscoe and I have said, no, that's not something we're gonna be presenting to you all as something that we should adopt, because one, they'd have to drop a meter at every bus stop. I'm sure VFT would love to pay for that, and then they'd have electrical bill associated with that mister to make sure that it was, you know, the pump was working, and then they have to flush it at the end of it, before the freeze comes. So it's a maintenance nightmare, so, I mean, we look at that one as a hold on, pump the brakes, that's not really gonna achieve anything that's associated with this one, really.
But VFT is putting in more covered bus stops.
Right,
So, I mean,
which,
that's.
which provides shade
Shade.
and weather protection.
Different ways to
Which is
meet
great,
goal.
but if you're gonna put misters in it, then heated seats too. Right. We're gonna spoil these things, everybody's all the way, so there is some level of sensibility to what we're gonna be bringing to you. On the onset, one of the policies that we were looking at is, well, we needed to provide more shade, so let's put in a bunch of trees. We're in the desert. Then there was another policy that said we need to conserve water. And so how do you look at those if you make it work? So through the process and having conversations with our consultants in this, is that, you know, we are on the west side of the state where we have free irrigation all year long that just provides the irrigation for the trees. So we live in a desert. So we've been working with the Benton Conservation District on the smarter way to put in that type of shading and vegetation that works within our desert environment. So, which our consultants realized that was an important part for us and made those with that shift. So.
If I look at these as, what they're looking at is they're setting goals. This is a Tri-City wise effort.
Yeah.
Correct? They're setting goals that Kennewick may meet, but we won't be able to. So to me, they're high level, like he says, the city's gonna have to pick and choose what we can meet. So not all of them are gonna meet your SMART, right, that are up there.
Right.
But I'm leaving it up to them to pick the ones that can.
But I'm wondering, is there a way for us as a city to decide which of these we can do or to make smart goals out of them?
Mhm.
So that we can say, okay, here's specifically how we're going, so that, you know, we might be able to at least have bragging rights where afterwards, if, you know, they say, oh, well, Kennewick has reached these goals. Oh, how? Because here's specifically how West Richland has reached these goals in this specific amount. And I know that bragging rights doesn't pay the bills, but
Well, I will
I
say,
feel like having this in general seems like it's a halfway there sort of a thing. Oh, I know.
well, I will say that we already have bragging rights because when you
Right.
look at all of the, the greenhouse emissions and everything else, I think West Richland was probably in the better of all of the tri-cities.
Even with the cows in the alpacas.
So I think and if you look at our concerns that were environment related, the wildfires and things, our number was a lot less because again, we don't have the floodplain that other jurisdictions have. And we don't have some of those other impacts that the other jurisdictions have to deal with. So it was definitely, we're in a better situation, I think, to do some things. We can definitely take a look at those goals and see if there's more noodling we want to do on it to make them more specific and smart, so to speak.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely. And something to note too, making them smart, the Department of Commerce, as you know, as part of this requirement, there is a tracking requirement where each jurisdiction needs to track to progress towards goals. And that's every 5 years. So coming up with a set of goals and associated policies for your jurisdiction that are trackable is really, really important because tracking is a requirement.
It does also seem like if we have goals that we're required to meet, and if we can come up with a specific measurable goal that's specific and timely, that might make for a better way to request money from the state and from the federals to say, hey, we have these goals, here's how we're actually gonna do it, but we need your help. Just to tell that story, like I know BMCOG is always talking about, we need to tell that story. Well, if we can tell that story with specific numbers, I know that the like numbers put in front of them. Roscoe's Madness said too, so.
But there's a lot of money available for varying trees from the state.
Right.
And you know,
You must be on the Yakima Basin.
yeah,
Are you on the Yakima Basin committee?
yeah, but Ben Conservation District has their own money they didn't spend.
Yes, they do.
So the question is, where can you plant trees that don't need water? And the answer is up on top of Flat Top Hill where we are so much near groundwater.
So, good point. Yeah.
So I have been looking at this and, so I'm actually a scientist engineer. I know the actual science. And, Jurassic period had 2,000 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. Now we're down to like 420 parts per million. And it waxes and wanes, but I'll mention that the more carbon you have in the atmosphere, the greener your earth becomes. Because if you all remember the carbon cycle, so if we want a green Washington state, we should be advocating for more cows, more water vapor, more gasoline cars being driven, but that aside. Now that's my rant, now I'll get to reality. I'll tell you, in the last 50 years that I've lived here, the biggest environmental impact we've had was the eruption of Mount St. Helens. And I didn't see, and I mean, I think it seems a little laughable at first. But when you're talking about how to be resilient to the environmental impacts of whatever, whether it's gas powered cars or global warming. In the Northwest, volcanoes should not be ignored. So it cost us billions of dollars. Actually, Google says 1.1 billion in damages. And it put a lot of people out of business for several days. And it required bulldozers and snowplows and things like that. And I'm thinking, like, as far as practical terms of our city, if we're looking for opportunities to get money from the state to help make ourselves resilient to environmental impacts.
No, climate change.
Let's Well, they've got wildfires in there and that's pretty far fetched. I mean, to say that's a result of climate change versus people being careless with their cigarette butts, but. But anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up, like, I'm not looking to build city funded shelters, but I thought that maybe if we had. Snowplow equipment that can clear roads. After a volcano goes off. That could be helpful.
Seems like we're more likely to have people that are experiencing not having a home than.
After a volcano, oh. How are they, that was one of my points is, I'd love to have an explanation of why climate change. Is driving affordable housing. Can we discuss that just for like 1 minute?
What?
How does that happen?
Because the extremes in temperatures are getting worse, and as the extremes get worse, then you have to have a higher R value. In everything, so you can protect the people on the inside from experiencing those extreme temperatures is one example. There's also the more amounts of storms involving. The worst storms, the worst rain, wind, the thunderstorms. How many thunderstorms have we had this year by the year prior?
That's a great question. I'd love to see that data.
Right.
But my point would be,
There's data out there.
if you have one hot day in the year, or even a dozen hot days versus 20 hot days. I mean, you need the shelter either way.
Sure,
Right.
yeah, which is why we
mean-
should have shelters.
I mean, you need.
I would just ask that we kind of stay focused. here.
Well, it is a point that's on that, one of our goals was to address affordable housing, and I wanna make sure that we don't, I'd like to personally make sure we don't fall into that trap.
All right,
Cause it doesn't make
Affordable
sense to
housing-
me.
The affordable housing policies will really be shoved down our throats as this is effectively, right? Because the state legislature adopted 1181.
Mhm.
They also adopted other House bills that address affordable housing that I'll be bringing towards you in the periodic update. That do require us to plan for affordable housing, which really I think is gonna address the needs here. More so than the climate element,
Right.
because there's part of the climate element, I believe, that's being attached to, for instance, the energy code. That I believe is taking affordable housing away from the state.
Right.
Because of the costs associated with throwing extra stuff. I mean, Mr. Bloom had to do a bunch of extra vehicles that he just built. It cost him probably an extra, at least $20,000. That he wouldn't have had to do had he built to the prior into the 2005.
I guess
So there are some things out there that exist that we're trying to lobby and fight against as a city and staff and whatnot. But you only can make headway so far when the golden path of this climate commitment act is out there.
Aren't they exempting the climate, the energy code for the affordable housing on the west side? I mean, they're building basically cardboard boxes almost.
I haven't heard anything interested in hearing about that.
No, I'm talking about, little mini, I mean, just sheds.
Yeah.
I grew up in Las Vegas, an 800 square foot house that did not have air conditioning for the first 10 years. And here I am. I just survived. I did survive. So I'm just like, let's put some reality behind it.
I thought 1181 didn't, we were exempt from that. I actually read the bill and it didn't sound like was for permitted to apply with 1181.
There are some affordable housing requirements that we have to comply with.
But the ADU, we don't. have to comply.
But there are some that we will, so I'll be bringing that with the periodic update, sharing that with
Okay.
you, but. Most of it is the higher density, like the fourplexes and sixplexes in residential districts, all single family homes. Single family zoning is going away in the state of Washington. So we will have conversations about that in the near future.
I'm glad.
When we reach 25,000 population, right?
Actually, there's like, yes, when we reach 25,000 population,
Yeah.
but there are some things we have to implement now. Still.
And is this all applicable to us now? It said, the first slide was like 6,000 people, or no, what was the qualifications?
The 11 counties.
county,
It's the
County
roads
based on the driver. Okay, so we do qualify.
Yeah.
Okay,
We
great.
got the end process.
So I'd love to get into like, what are we actually gonna do for this? Like, I think Kate is.
So that'll be the next step, so okay, we get it. Mr. Stoker, you had.
I guess my question's a little more simplistic, so
What are we talking about when we're talking about low-cost cooling systems?
Low cost what?
Cooling systems,
Cooling
this is bullets up there.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Fans.
Power cost,
Yeah.
Huh?
power cost.
I know, that's the question.
So obviously we need more small nuclear power.
I was fairly poor growing up, and we had a swamp river that the water didn't work very well. We had to go with the hose and spring rains down.
We go water conservation, power conservation. Yeah.
And greenhouse gas for water vapor.
Well, that gets to Kate's comment about the smart policy. So
I'm just curious, I mean, it's on the list, so what are we talking
It is.
about? We're talking about low cost cooling systems.
Well, the city really can't drive a low cost cooling system.
Right.
You have to put that kind of cooling system in. It has to be complying with our energy, with the state energy.
Comply with
And it
the
won't
energy
comply with the
code.
energy code. So some of these things I think are not smart at all. They're just, there's some of the policies, like I said before, about the requirement to have all these trees and a tree canopy within the city, but then you wanted to have water conservation. And so because we live in a desert, I lean a lot heavier on the water conservation because, well, that's where we need to go. And let's go talk to the conservation district about vegetation. So there are some policies in here that we're gonna be working through and making sure that get filtered and make sure that the city of West Virginia's needs. This is again, a region-wide approach that we took, cast a big net, the CPAT
Plan.
the conservation district, or the committee the advisory team, the citizen advisory team. They came up with some ideas and we listened to, but that doesn't mean we necessarily have to adopt those ideas. Look, line and sinker. I think we take a look at those and really see what's most important to us. Is it the tree canopy, for instance, or is it water conservation? Is it putting misters at a transit station? Or is it, doing something else to help, like putting a roof over top of these things? And so we'll definitely be taking a look at those. These aren't the final draft that we're gonna be putting in front of you to be adopted. I'm gonna be working with the planning commission, going through them in more detail before they come to you. They'll go to the CD subcommittee as well to make sure that there's buy-off. And that we're addressing all the concerns, except for, again, I don't want to debate about climate change if it exists or not, because it's not really part of this discussion. This is what we have. I'll also be bringing a list of the policies that are required by the state that we have to adopt. And then if there are any that we're recommending that we implement based on just the citizen advisory committee, maybe they brought the CPAC group to hear some good ideas. We believe they're good ideas too, so we think we should be putting those on. But we'll be bringing all of that and have that kind of labeled out with either color coded or whatnot. Share them with you guys.
So do we have any understanding why the legislature picked year 2022 as a baseline? 2022 is our baseline for emissions and being. Because, well, we just kind of coming out of COVID at that time, July already rose and was, and it's all.
Gretchen, you have an answer for that one? Why did the state pick 2022? I don't know. As our baseline year for.
Yeah, working assumption is that it's the most recent data available. I believe it was
Something that
2019 before that.
Sorry. Something that I was just thinking about with, we're talking about canopy, are we also talking about in general, can't remember the specific phrasing, but the urban heat where we're talking about having blacktop versus having plants? Yeah, like urban heat islands where, we have a bunch of housing with a bunch of parking versus having more like plants and less parking. Is that somewhere included in our goals? Looking at heat sinks?
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Catherine to reference the specific set of policies that are related to exactly that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I know that we have included that in the policies. I'm trying to find the exact references. I'm sure it shows up in a few places, both of the like built environment and in new developments, as well as increasing in just more natural areas and having more ability to grow additional vegetation. So yeah, can follow up when I find the actual policies.
Thank you. One of the things I forgot that I had a question about, I was just wondering, what is the off-road equipment you're talking about? Are you talking like, boats and, ATVs, thank you. Boats, ATVs, golf carts. What are we talking about here with the off-road? Looking at, the pie chart on slide 20.
Yes, that's exactly right. So I can find actually the specific list, or it's like specific kind of categories, and then within those are the specific types of equipment and vehicles you mentioned. So the categories are, yes, so agricultural equipment, construction equipment, lawn and garden, industrial, pleasure craft, commercial, and there's maybe 5 or 6 other categories. And then within those are exactly the examples you mentioned.
Okay. All right. That's, I figured that was it, but I wanted to make sure I had the right thing in mind.
Yeah.
And the freight and service vehicles, is that specifically with either like the tractor trailer and the UPS, or is it also talking about freight and barges, things like that? Although I don't think we have any barges. We do? That's true, yeah. That's fair. So for these freight and service vehicles, is that specifically those that would be going on the road, or is it for all modes of transportation that's for freight and service?
It's on-road specifically. So it's a subset of on-road. Within on-road, we've got those passenger vehicles as a subset, and then also the heavy duty or freight and service vehicles.
Okay. Do planes factor into this at all?
No, they don't. And we've got, yeah, within the broader, or the not broader, but the more detailed full analysis report, we have some sections on the included and excluded emission sources, and some notes about why. And generally it boils down to a few things, either the data being harder to find or not as reliable and consistent. Also a lack of jurisdictional control. So we often focus our greenhouse gas analyses on the pieces that are a little more literally close to home, and that jurisdictions have a little more control over. And so there's, aviation and planes basically are within the category of things that were not included in this analysis, but are included at the county level
I just
analysis.
figured there's a lot of greenhouse gases created from the Pasco Airport and the Richland Airport, at least a little bit, but especially Pasco, because there's
those two.
all kinds of planes coming through there.
I mean, if we're gonna talk greenhouse, we should have
a
included,
lot.
Pasco and Richland should have been included.
In this area, so I used to mow the lawn when I was 12 years old for a lady who had lived here for like 70 years before. And matter of fact, it was Mrs. Dam of John Dan Plaza.
Mm-hmm.
And she would tell me that they used to drive across the Columbia River
Yeah.
in the winter time. And the other thing she told me is that you used to be able to look out, if you went up to Flat Top Hill, go ahead, you could look out and see forever,
Yeah.
all the time. And she made it very abundantly clear that it was the irrigation when farms moved in, which there were no farms back. I mean, they were limited, orchards and things. When the farms moved in, that obscured your view, and it's water vapor, and water vapor is a very close second to CO2. So around here, water vapor is not to mention the evaporation from our rivers. And the area, and the area agriculture, which nobody wants to attack those things, but those are a huge contributor to the greenhouse effect. Personally, I have no concern about them, but nevertheless, water is something that should honestly be on this list if you want to honestly consider greenhouse gas. I mean, it's just an inconvenient fact. But I'm more interested in what we're gonna do.
No.
So
The next step,
I'm happy to move on and
is everyone ready to move on at this point? Gretchen or whoever's gonna take the lead on what's next, let's do that section, please.
Sounds great. And we just have a couple of slides here with the star of where we are right now, and then the remaining steps till we get to that October 31st timeline with that final regional climate element. So as we mentioned, things have been up for public comment since September 9th on the BFCOG website, linked from URAL's website to BFCOG as part of that public review period. So if there are any additional comments that you'd like to share that you didn't either didn't come to you tonight in our time together or come to you as you're driving away, please feel free to add any additional comments through October 8th on the BFCOG website. And the other couple of steps here, we, as I mentioned, just wrapped up our last CPAT meeting last week, where we did a final review of the draft policies, the regional draft policies and associated goals, and then also wrapped up our public meetings. So we can go to the next slide, please. And this, and Eric, feel free to jump in here if there's any more additional detail that you'd like to share. So we wrap up as a project team on the end of October, and then do basically a baton handoff with this regional climate element to each of URAL's entities, whether they're additional consultant teams with your staff. We will do that baton handoff and have some resource documents, some wayfinding documents to help support teams and the integration into your comprehensive planning process. And so we're in process of working on kind of better definition around kind of here's what we're thinking about what that baton handoff can look like, and getting inputs from the consultant teams and the project teams that are working on your all's comprehensive plan to make sure that baton handoff is as smooth and seamless as possible, and you all are off and running with your comprehensive, integrating this and the pieces that you'd like to integrate into your comprehensive plan. And Eric, I'll turn it over to you for any additional detail that you'd like to share about what it will look like post October 31st.
Great. Thank you, Gretchen. So I sent out an Excel spreadsheet to you all in that email I sent. So if you go through that and see all of the draft policies and goals that are presented, I'd recommend you review those, provide comments through the end of next week on the comment period through the BFCOG's website. That would be very helpful, because then that gets fed into the regional instead of just here in West Richland. It'd be fed out to the whole region, which I think that those comments should be shared across the region. I would love to see your comments as well. So if you are going to provide comments out there, I would love to get a copy of them. Because as I said, we have to adopt certain goals and policies that are going to be state required. There are going to be other policies in here that may not need to be. And I would love to get your input on those. And there's information in that Excel spreadsheet that breaks down as far as is it related to House Bill 1181. So please read through that. I'm happy to set up a meeting with you if you would like to discuss those with me in person. I'd be happy to do that as well, as I am with any other project that we're working on in the planning department. So we will be, so Burke is the other consultant working on this climate element with Cascadia. And so they are also our consultant on the periodic updates. So it kind of works well to have them working hand in hand within this. So That handoff is gonna be pretty smooth for Gretchen. It's not gonna be too difficult for her to be able to pass that over and the information over to her team. And like I said, Roscoe and I have been combing through this. We've been working with our sister agencies, as well as like the solid waste, I forget the name, who do y'all pay your bill to? For your solid waste.
Basin.
Basin disposal, thank you. So we've been working with Basin Disposal on this as well. And having conversations with them about it, making sure that the goals and policies that we adopt. Aren't going to also put a burden on them that's unnecessary if these are not state required. We're also working with FMREA to see if they would be supportive of some of the emission reductions that are related to energy consumption. So we're not doing this in a vacuum, so to speak. We are trying to reach out to everybody and work with everybody. And it's been a long road, but we're getting there towards the end. And hopefully be able to then integrate this into a solid package to bring to you with your company.
So I would like to, so these policy themes then that we would be presented, these goals are like goal CE5, protect community health and well-being, one's emergency preparedness, response and recovery, impacts, climate related hazards, focusing resources on people and places most at risk to these hazards. So is that a goal that we developed here, or is that what the state is saying and we're coming up with policy themes, which is which? How did we came up with that word? Is that our consultants?
Those are consultants through this process, yes. Yeah, again, that seems like a really high level, it's not target specific, right?
Right, and goal. Right, and the policy themes then, are those supposed to become directly related to actions on in the spreadsheet?
Yes, so like with all of our comprehensive plan elements, we have goals and policies that are built within those. But then feed into regulations, right? So if there were any regulations that get attached to it, we bring it to you and say, okay, here's the goal and policy that was adopted by council. And here's the actual regulation that we implemented based on that.
So I would like to suggest that instead of, or in addition to expanding programs to provide cooling and warming centers and other emergency shelters, which we have survived as civilization for decades, if not long, without, to add, because we're focusing on potential flooding, to maybe put a policy theme of enhancing our emergency response to water search and rescue or water emergency response. So we have a local outfit that does some search and rescue, but I think it would be dollars well spent to enhance their effort.
Sure, I think we should do some words in there that talk to support our regional operators like that, because I think search and rescue is done by the county for Benton County. It's not something that our local police department, fire department necessarily take on fully, but they probably participate like SWAT and other special groups.
If we have cooperative agreements with the other cities, if a dam were to break, heaven forbid, this could be a critical resource that would actually be helpful to save lives.
There are people that die from extreme heat and extreme cold all the time. Far more than.
Have been for a million years in family theology. Just saying. I'm sorry. People around the world live without air conditioning. Air conditioning was invented in
Do you?
1955. No, I love my air conditioner.
I grew up without air conditioning.
The point is that we're using tax dollars to solve these problems. People want to buy their own air conditioning, more power to them, but if they can't afford it. That's too bad. They're joining the rest of the 90% of the global population.
I think the purpose is also that the government is supposed to make certain that people are safe.
I just leave it at that. Right. Our job is not to make people.
I don't think that Chief Fry would agree with you.
No, I think he should. I think his job is law enforcement.
I
And
think
our
we're
job is
getting a
to,
little tough.
yeah, so let's stop that.
We're drifting.
We're drifting, okay, but no, I think that maybe adding the search and rescue as a flood response. Would be an interesting thing to add to this. Trying to come up with something productive from this, what I otherwise consider being onerous, somewhat ridiculous sudden goals. So John, I'm beyond driven by law. Unfortunately, I understand, I can call a law ridiculous, I still have to abide by it, but I can do what I can, make it practical for a purpose.
So I would recommend providing those comments, like I said, through that BFCOG forum. And then like I request, if you could send them to me, then that'll help as I take this through. It'll help me maybe massage some of these policy goals to make sure I'm addressing some concerns of the majority here. Understand that there might be an individual who has strong opinions one way or another, but it's more about the majority counting to four, so to speak.
That's why you have meetings.
So
Here,
what sort of timelines should we expect for the next year on this? Like, are we gonna have something in like a month or two that's kind of like a finished document that we sit on until November 2026, or is it gonna be like more continued over the whole year working on it until then?
the upcoming activities slide back up.
Yeah, that's a pretty broad.
Because there's that like a year kind of gap on it. Like,
October 2025 and then November, December 26.
gosh, is it be anticipated being finished up and just sitting until it's implemented in a year?
That's what my hope is. I've got some PTO that I have to take, that I use it before the end of the year, so I'm trying to figure out how to make that happen. And yet keep all of the balls in the air. So
It's not like something where it's like gonna be continuously having.
no, I don't want to make this another year project.
Okay.
I'd like to put a nice polish to it, set it aside, work on the periodic update. Address all the affordable housing things that we need to do that, and the other state legislator mandates that we have for those. Get that taken care of, bring that through the planning commission and then to council. And then at the very end, when you guys make a recommendation or they adopt the documents, that I bring all of that together in one big package, and then that goes through in one big.
You're not looking forward to a policy won't government insurance?
It's my job, I mean, that's what I do, right? Just sharing things.
What I do.
And it works, so. Yeah. It's a challenge.
Well, if there's nothing else, we'll conclude. Gretchen, Catherine, Alicia, thank you for your time tonight. And we are done at, what is it, 6:52? Yeah, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate you guys.
Excellent. Thank you all for having us. Have a great night.
I just got a text from Chad, and he had not, he enjoyed meetings tonight.